You're listening to the Travis Makes Money podcast presented by GoHighLevel.com. For a free 30-day trial of the best all-in-one digital marketing software tool on the planet, just go to GoHighLevel.com/Travis. What is going on, money makers? Welcome back to the Travis Makes Money podcast, where it's our mission to help you make more money. If you're new to the show, we release brand new conversations just like this one every single day of the week with unconventional money makers around the globe. So if you haven't yet, please be sure to go hit that subscribe or follow button, whatever podcast app you enjoy listening in the most, including YouTube. That way you never miss out on an opportunity to learn how to make some more cash. Today on the show, we are talking about neurotechnology with my new friend, Thoryn Stephens. Thoryn is a leading expert in neurotechnology, longevity, and analytics, specializing in data architecture, consumer insights, behavioral analytics, and systems optimization. He's the founder of Brain.one, a pioneering brain fitness platform featuring the world's most extensive collection of brain health, microhabits, and protocols. As you all know, making money starts in the mind. And if you haven't optimized your mind, if you haven't optimized your brain, then you're going to find it much more difficult to be able to unlock the next level of income that you are so desperately searching for, which is why you listen to this show. So I'm super stoked to jump into this conversation with Thoryn. Man, what's up, man? Welcome to the show.
Hey, Travis. So great to meet you. Thank you for having me on.
Let's start back in time and then we'll work our way up to what you got going on now. Tell me how you made your first dollar ever.
First dollar ever. I think it was when I was, maybe like 13. I was back east for the summer visiting family, and I worked at a fireworks stand and
Oh,
sold.
nice.
And I think now it'd be illegal at the age, but and so I'd visit my family every time, in July essentially, and I did this for a number of years, and I was the highest grossing firework seller on the team.
Ah, nice. So you had some sort of a natural proclivity towards salesmanship.
I guess so. Yeah,
Did your parents do anything like that? What did your parents do?
no, they're very creative. My mother's a chocolatier. My father is a chef as well. So lots of
Wow.
food in the blood. I was the anomaly scientist, kind of out in the wind.
Wait, so you got to grow up sampling chocolates?
Absolutely. Yep.
That's a pretty sweet gig, bro. I'm not gonna lie to you.
All different types. Yep.
Yeah. If there's like a thing that you could have your parents do as a kid, that's got to be like top three. It's like sports agent, you know what I mean? Like get me into some games, get me some free gear from my favorite
Sure.
players. But chocolate tasting, dude, that's awesome. So your dad was a chef then.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
He's also a musician, so I have that in the blood as well.
Oh
But
wow. So very creative.
very creative.
Yeah. The
Yep.
more like if when you go out and have good food, like good food, you start realizing how much of an art form it truly is. It's not just
Absolutely.
about cooking something. It's just like the blend of flavors and stuff that people can put together. It's just like you can do nothing except for just like close your eyes and thank them profusely. You know what I mean?
100%. I mean, basic, cooking in food science is chemistry. You have salts, sugars, fats, and the myriad of, the orchestration of the ingredients to
Yeah.
create the final product. So,
Yeah, so very much grew up in a household of creativity, but sometimes I find that the entrepreneurial brain and creativity brain kind of butt heads a little bit. Would you have thought that this was the path that you were going to take in life?
I always knew since I was quite young, I was always attracted to science as a really interpretation of the world. And so at a pretty early age, I'd say in my early teens, that was just something in the consciousness and in the trajectory. And so ultimately, when I went to school, it was very linear. I got my bachelor's of science in biotechnology and was working towards a graduate degree and decided to jump into biotechnology and in drug development directly.
Did you have like a counselor or somebody who was kind of helping you decide these types of things? Because from what I understand, like this field can be very like siloed. Like you're
Mm.
you're you're like choosing a degree in biotechnology obviously is probably leads to better job opportunities, but it's also like a very segmented portion of what you would look at as being quote unquote science. What made you choose this path? Was there somebody that influenced you, or is this something that you just had a lot of interest in?
Yeah, that's a great question. I had the opportunity to go to high school at a boarding school in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. And so that's Northern Colorado, and it was primarily a school for U.S. ski team and Olympians and snowboarders and so forth. And it was that experience actually. I had a a teacher at that time. So this, would have been, sophomore, junior years. And his name is Mr. Roberts. And Mr. Roberts was our biology teacher who taught me mitosis and meiosis and all the things biology. And so ultimately, when I went to college, it was just a very clear, I would say, trajectory relative to what I was interested in and also how I wanted to give back to the world.
So what did you do right after that?
After college,
Yes.
yes, I went directly into drug development. I was working as a molecular biologist, and this is right when the human genome got sequenced. So I was working in the genomics area. So we would be responsible for looking for different, in one example, like mitotic kinesin, so a different novel biological target that we would then synthesize and then look for other targets of those categories. In that case, it was mitotic kinesins as an example. And then
So
we do optimization with different molecules to try to, find a specific either inhibitor or activator, depending on the indication.
so at this point, were you at all thinking of entrepreneurship, or were you just excited to be in the field?
Yeah, I was definitely thinking about it back then.
Okay.
My early 20s. I didn't know if it would be more in, biotech or tech or what, but yeah, it was very much, I'd say, in the blood.
Why? And I'm going to frame that a little bit better, not just to leave you hanging there, but
Sure.
a lot of people that would pursue this sort of highly academic, esteemed type of field would just be stoked to be working in the field and using their degree, them putting it to the test. I find that, like kind of what I've said at the beginning of this, like typically these are two fields that are in opposition to each other, like this highly academic or highly creative brains. They don't typically go along with the like entrepreneurial brain and
Hmm.
the kind of shiny object syndrome that entrepreneurs have. Was this something for you that was like, I just think that my talent or like my knowledge would be better served in this field? Is this a better way to tackle the problems that I see in the world? Or is this more of like, I've always wanted to be able to control my schedule. I've always wanted to be able to have outsized returns on my time in terms of the money that you're making. What was it for you that like you the whole time kept bringing you back to I'm going to start something at some point?
Yeah, I think it's a feeling of, leadership and entrepreneurship and autonomy, actually wanting to build something for yourself with your vision and execute accordingly. So I'd say that was probably the kind of the kernel.
When did you make the jump?
So I, officially, so in the like 2000s, I was working in biotechnology. And then, really, I was doing some consulting and then moved to LA. And this is like in roughly 2010. And at the time, there wasn't a lot of technology in LA. This is like pre-Snap and Dollar Shave and, pretty much like the major companies like Apple and Google, moving down to LA from Silicon Valley and so forth. And it was just a very interesting time to be, I was in Venice Beach specifically for 10 years actually. And
Wow.
in Venice, there's just this kind of air of just excitement and,
Mhm.
just energy. And so that was kind of the beginning. So I transitioned out of biotech and then into technology and started off, as basically moving from San Francisco to LA. I had these skills in drug development, and there was really no biotechnology in LA at the time, and so basically transitioned directly into initially as a digital analyst, essentially like bottom of the food chain, and was really focused on all things measurement. And what I found quite quickly was that I could use essentially data to drive insights and insights to drive hypotheses and ultimately the concept of like rapid iterative testing of different user pathways online and that through measurement you could optimize any human behavior and did that successfully for a number of pretty large businesses
So
and
you were
then
kind of taking a consulting role at that point, or you were working for these companies?
no full time. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So I was still full time. And and did that for a number of years. And then, I did some private equity work and, could have stayed there and made a lot of money. But I really felt that, as I was looking at, additional private equity work, is that really where my heart is and where I want to be focused? And so it was about 2.5 years ago, I decided to take, really like the jump with Brain One ultimately. And it was really it was almost a redefining of my purpose,
Mm,
actually.
yeah, no
And
kidding.
I wouldn't say quite existential, but it was one of those moments where I felt from a very early age I was, on this path of science, and then, I had some successes and so forth in these other areas, but I needed to go back to that, and specifically science. And then really had the vision for Brain One, which was a bit of an amalgamation of all these things I'd done previously, from the biological side, from genomics and proteomics, all the way through to measurement and training for Ironmans and so forth. And so it's a bit of a amalgamation of all of these different areas of my life.
Yeah, what I find interesting, man, is like I think sometimes people romanticize these high income careers and tell them and spin this story that they buy into that, man, well, I would start a business too if I was making good money and I had some money in the bank and blah blah blah. But typically I find that it's actually the opposite.
Right.
That it operates as these, the term the golden handcuffs,
Mhm.
and people can just be like, you know what, why bother with this business that could potentially, suck my savings dry and leave me with nothing at the end of the day. I'm just going to keep making this, multi six
Sure.
figure income, doing the thing that I'm pretty good at, and
Yep.
putting some money in a 401k, and they get caught in that kind of cycle. And so, I tell people, man, it's like it's not the circumstance that creates the entrepreneur. It's the entrepreneur that creates the circumstance, and you are
Sure.
the one that stepped into that massive change to completely redefine even your identity from the ground up. Tell me about your philosophy on personal finance during this time for you to be able to make that switch from, you know, from academia to employee to kind of cog in the machine, a really effective thing that you were doing, but definitely building other things for other people, and
Sure.
then making the switch. So real practical, if you can, as much as you
Yeah.
can share on the numbers here for
Yeah.
personal finance philosophy.
Yeah. 100%. So I took out student loans and paid for my own college.
Okay.
So it was tens of thousands. And that was always just some debt, but I always was raised, to be zero, pretty much debt free.
Mm-hmm.
And paid off all my student loans, made my first million, whatever, before I was 30. And then, from that period, I was doing corporate work, in my 30s essentially. And, I was able to do well both at large companies and small companies. But kind of to your point, if I would have stayed in corporate, it would have been this really linear career path, generally speaking. And honestly, it just kind of like, the thought of it just would bore me to death. I mean, I've worked at large Fortune 100 companies, and I was successful, working in
Yeah.
some people are like good at startups or big companies. I was able to do both and do both successfully. But, as I was in corporate America as a cog, quite literally working for, multi-billion, entertainment company, I saw that path. And in some ways, it was interesting because I had massive budgets and, a lot of leeway. But on the other hand, the autonomy was kind of an issue. And so, just from back to the corporate finance question or the personal finance question. So I've always lived pretty debt free, once I
Okay.
paid off my student loans and not a lot of credit card debt. And then full circle, sold a house here in Colorado a couple years ago. I was living in Venice, moved essentially back to Colorado full time. And that's, roughly about 2.5 years ago is when I started Brain One. And it was really one of those situations where I had people offering to invest, and I didn't want to take a dollar until I was 100% confident that we were moving towards product market fit.
Mm.
And, in the past, I mean, I raised a good amount of capital, probably, 100 million between PE and VC over the years. And, in this case, and I've raised money and then built products, in this case, we kind of did the opposite. I mean, we built the product and we've been iterating on it, and I mean, I had our AI up and running for some of our content modeling and some of our protocol modeling, like literally, nearly day one when we started, founded the company.
Wow.
So all of it was very much in parallel and bootstrapped it. And, I did the full entrepreneur's, journey where I maxed out the credit cards. I've really only used credit maybe one other time in my life and, just really went for it.
Yeah.
And, really built the product. And it was actually one of my first advisors. I can mention him. His name's Russ Nash. He is a former head of global healthcare at Accenture, and I've known him for a number of years. And I'd been working on Brain One. We're about a year and a half in at that point, and we're starting, to get some customers. And I was like, Russ, I'm going to blow your mind with what we've built. And he's like, I don't know, Thoryn, we're going to see. And he's been in this health technology space for 20 some years, and he really saw the vision that I put forth around brain fitness and brain health, and then the idea of personalized protocols. And from his perspective, he has 20 investments in the health technology space, three which have done extremely well. He had seen this space within brain fitness, and he was all in. So he was actually the first check I took for the company. But
Nice, man. That's
yeah, and
awesome.
still,
Solid partner to have on board too.
oh, thank you. Yeah, no, he's great. And yeah, and still, paying off the credit cards, but all good. And if, I was maybe at a different stage of my life, I wouldn't, feel as confident to do this. But
Sure. Sure.
and it's something about realignment of purpose, though, to come back to that point. Like once I realigned my purpose about 2.5 years ago, again, Brain One has just been a rocket ship, and we've attracted such amazing humans and partners and team members that are so dedicated to really this core concept of health protocols, and it's been incredible. So it's that alignment of purpose I'd come back to.
Yeah, purpose, man, that's a difficult one. It's nothing nothing is better than doing work that's tied to your purpose, and at the same time nothing is worse than doing work that has zero ties back to your purpose.
Yeah.
How would you recommend people even begin that journey?
Yeah, I remember I had a girlfriend in college, and she's like, Thoryn, how did you know what you wanted to do? And I was like, how did you not? It was this really like
Mm,
interesting, kind of revelation, and this was in my whatever late teens. And I guess I've always been, driven to that, like this kind of like, just like linear pull in that direction, even though it's ebbed and flowed, and I've gone into different industries and so forth, and went in and out of science. But it was just kind of this like just, trajectory and pull, that I felt just really was the driver. And I've always woken up very inspired in the morning, to solve problems. And that's, even and back when I was like selling fireworks at like 12 years old or whatever, like waking up and just being excited to, help solve problems and try to make the world a better place ultimately. So,
so tell me a little bit about Brain One. What's the
sure.
driving purpose behind the company, and what is it?
Yeah.
What is like the core problem that you're trying to solve?
Yeah. So the core problem that we're trying to solve is, I mean, it's the concept that, well, take a step back. So first, I believe that the future of human health lies in the idea of personalized healthcare protocols and routines. And so I think that a human, when they're informed about a specific, whatever they're trying to achieve, if they followed a structured framework or protocol, that they are at least set up for success, whatever that might be. And so we have built essentially a platform that drives continuous incremental improvement of things like brain fitness. So we have brain fitness protocols. It could be just other areas of general health. It could be for a specific area of women's health, like perimenopause, as an example. But the idea that we are offering essentially a system where you can find health protocols that you can follow, in conjunction with your doctor and so forth, but to ultimately optimize your health. And that's the core concept.
Is it specifically around the health of the brain, or is it holistic
So that's where we
advancement?
started. Yeah. So we started with brain protocols, and people could download a protocol. And then, depending on what they can afford, if they can afford doing like a full biomarker cognition assessment, they could do a pre and post essentially, and then go through the protocol and then, see, did they improve those specific biomarkers? That's like the kind of one of the examples. And that was initially only in brain fitness. And as we'd gone down that road, and again, there's a difference between brain fitness and brain health. You talk about brain fitness, that's optimizing the brain that you have. And there's a number of, again, lifestyle behavioral changes you can make. There's, of course, nootropics and supplements and, so forth. And so we're going down that road, and then we began to see, an opportunity just within all of brain. So we've developed protocols for neurodegeneration and brain health. And so that would be to help support people that are looking to prevent Alzheimer's or
Mm.
dementia.
Yeah,
And so there's a hypothesis. Have you heard that dementia is preventable?
I have. Yes.
Yeah. So generally there's a paper you can Google. It's called The Lancet 2020. And it talks about that 30 to 40% of global dementia cases could be preventable with behavioral modifications and
Mm.
changes. And it's
Things
about,
like nutrition and things like that.
yeah, lifestyle. Yep, exactly. Lifestyle changes. And some of these are, but nutrition, of course, is like the foundation, for that 100%. And so we basically took that paper, we ran it through our AI, we generated an editorial, which I'd be happy to share, and then a protocol that you can download for free. And then you can follow this protocol. You can use our tracker or not, but you can ultimately see, what is the framework. And you could, we're looking to give these away, but you give away these protocols. I mean, this could impact, hundreds of millions or ultimately billions of humans that are looking for these very specific, areas of concern, essentially, or just optimization.
Something I've heard online that maybe you could help shed some light on is that Alzheimer's or dementia, forget which one, maybe both, is essentially like type 4 diabetes.
Mm.
Have you heard that correlation before? Can you shed some light on that?
I have that. I haven't researched it though, to be
Okay.
honest. Yeah.
Okay. And then what about nicotine? Do you have any thoughts on nicotine and its ability to help prevent some of these things? I've heard that there's some
Interesting.
research
No,
coming out on
no,
that.
I haven't researched that either, actually.
Yeah,
But
I'd be really curious to hear what you have to say about that as I
sure.
have a nicotine pouch in my mouth
I
right
saw
now.
that. I wasn't gonna.
Yeah. I'm
I
hoping I'm
mean,
not doing
yeah.
more harm than good, essentially.
In historical societies, nicotine is a very revered plant, tobacco. And so I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of benefits for tobacco, traditionally and so forth. But, it's also highly addictive and all the other.
Yeah, yeah. That's I was trying to do some dumb person research on it and just
Sure.
make sure I'm not completely destroying all other things that I do for my health by doing it. But yeah, from what I've seen, and there's some people out there like you familiar with Max Lugavere?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
Totally.
I know Max has done quite a bit of stuff in the Alzheimer's
Yep.
neurodegenerative disorder space with his mom and different things that have
Yep.
happened in his personal life.
Sure.
But yeah, that was one of the people that I had heard mention it, and somebody who I look at as a trustworthy source of nutritional information. Who's steeped in research, who turned me on to the idea of using nicotine because I feel like most people use it for like getting off of cigarettes or whatever. And I was
Right.
never a smoker or anything. I
Okay.
started using it for the
Yeah.
benefits of potentially, helping to prevent some of these neurodegenerative disorders because that's like
Okay.
one of my biggest fears in life.
Yeah, sure. You and, our parents and I mean, literally
Yeah.
most humans. So
Well, because
absolutely.
what's interesting, man, is like I feel like Western medicine has helped us to be able to extend our lifespan, but
Sure.
lifespan isn't necessarily the number one marker that I'm going for. It's really health
Right.
span. It's
Sure.
how
Of
long
course.
can you maintain being alive
Yep.
while still being a healthy contributing member of your family and to society.
Sure.
And it scares the crap out of me to be like completely physically fine but then
Yep.
have my mind just disappear, vanish into thin air. So I think what you're working on is absolutely something that will be, part of everybody's nutritional protocols is thinking about the health of their brain and their mind, even more so than just the health of their body.
100%. Yeah, I have a super quick anecdote. So, I live here in Colorado and I I broke my clavicle. So this is 2 years ago. I was
Oof.
doing backside, boom, hit, and long story short, I go to Stedman Institute, number one orthopedic in the United States. All the athletes go and so forth. I've been a number of times. And I go in, she's like, okay, bone on bone, clean break your clavicle. I was like, great, what's my health protocol? And she threw me a sling. And like literally, I was like, oh, so it's a mobilization, right? Literally.
Yeah.
And this was the protocol. I was like, that's it. And she's like, pretty much. I mean, gave me maybe a piece of paper, and so I went to my community and I was like, hey guys, I haven't broken a bone as an adult, but broke my clavicle. What do you recommend? And a lot of my team members were like, "Oh, nutrition, bone broth, collagen," and so I did I was making bison, bone broth and soups and really focusing on my nutrition. And I did some PEMF. You're familiar with PEMF, PEMF?
No.
It's a pulse electrical magnetic frequency. It's in the bioresonance realm, and this was like hyperlocalized, essentially electricity that came through the bone and da da da. And it's pretty well researched, all in all. And long story short, she said, "Come back in 6 weeks." And I was flying overseas, and so I came back, and it was like 4 weeks basically. And she does the X-ray, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, it's completely fused. What did you do?"
Wow.
I was like, "Great." I was like, "Oh, I focused on my nutrition." And she was like, "Oh, I never would have thought of that." And it was one of those like epiphany moments where I'm like, how
Oh
can you
no.
possibly think about human health if you're not thinking about nutrition? You
Literally,
know,
yeah.
thereby, rehabilitation or recovery or, anything
Right.
really. I mean, we are an artifact. We are a direct, mirror of what we put into our bodies. And so that's just one of those, like, I've had that in the back of my mind. I was like, okay, this is why we need to build this company, so
Yeah,
we
no kidding.
actually have these types of protocols people can follow. And, a lot of these principles, like going back to Lancet 2020, the dementia prevention study, I mean, some of these are, pretty like simple things, but people overlook. And like, just as another quick example, I was meeting with the Center for Brain Health out of University of Texas, and they've been doing this research for 20 or 30 years. And most of the research is done on self-report. So like, think about like cognition, surveys, tests, things of that nature, not looking at biometrics or biomarkers. And of course, that's my background, and then genomics and proteomics and transcriptome and all the things. And so I was meeting with their managing director and telling her my vision. It was about a year and a half ago. And she's like, "Thoryn, that's really great." She's like, "Yeah, that's kind of where we started, and where we ended up." And I was like, "Please, Dr. Sandra, tell me." And she's like, "Yeah, it's connection, And so humans that have connection, like literally, if it's a, weekly book club, if it's, cards, like whatever it is, they have some connection to community, to, a group, to, and not, to themselves. I mean, I think that's a whole nother dimension as well, is, whatever you look at that, whether it's, you call it a God, whether it's, gratitude, but, some connection to yourself, some gratitude practice, and then connection, to other humans routinely, like that is, like literally your life expectancy, grows. I mean, I think it's like something like 10 to 15 years, in
Yeah,
that
it's
realm.
pretty wild, man. My other podcast is called Travis Makes Friends. So
Okay.
we talk a lot
Yeah.
about friendship,
Cool.
community, and like my opinion,
Sure.
man, it's the number.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me that people can write entire books about health and longevity
Yeah.
and never mention community and connection
Sure.
with other people. It's like, oh, this is like the number one biohack. It's an increase in all cause mortality
Yeah.
when somebody feels disconnected from the tribe, disconnected from the community. And it makes complete sense because that's
Makes complete sense.
exactly,
Yeah.
it's hardwired into our biology from tens of
Yeah.
thousands of years of hunter gatherers
Sure.
roaming around. Like the, it from the research that I've seen is that it puts you in a state of basically a constant state of fight or flight when you feel
Yeah.
disconnected, because that literally meant death just a few
Right.
thousand years ago. If you were
Mhm.
isolated from the tribe, from the community, it was only a
Yeah.
matter of time before you quite literally perished
Sure.
due to some
Couple
external
hundred years
factor.
ago. I mean, even,
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I
really
mean,
recent.
yeah.
Yeah.
One, 100%. And you're right. It's really interesting framing. I mean, the number one biohack, I mean, 100%. Yeah. You
Yeah.
cannot downplay acts of connection and community.
We are holistic beings, man, and it's silly to think that we can't do something to solve some of the biggest problems that we have on things that we've been doing for a long time, because the body is
100%.
amazing. The ability for the body to be able to heal itself is pretty remarkable. We're just all doing things every day that prevent the body from being able to do the natural processes that it's trying to do at all times. So we think we need this additional Western medicine thing. We think we need another pill to take in addition to our 12 other pills that we're taking. We think we need this particular, thing or this physical therapy thing. And it's like, sometimes it's just a matter of letting your body, like getting out of the way and letting
Sure.
your system do what it's meant to do, which is fix
Yeah.
itself
Hmm.
and thrive.
Yeah. I would agree. Yeah. And so, that from that perspective, right? So having a structured framework of things to follow, that's
Yeah.
really of what we've been working on. And they can be very simple, again, like, Huberman, of course, it's like, hydration, nutrition, direct sunlight. I'm a big fan of sauna, or I do hot Pilates like 3 to 4 days a week because I get the sweat and the workout,
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
of that nature.
Man, I love the concept of the company, man. I love where you guys are going with this. I think it's very well poised to get a large share of the market, especially as it relates to like your background is just perfectly unique enough to solve the problem from a holistic perspective because you need a lot of these different insights, the technology piece, but also the understanding of biology to be able to put together. Because what you're doing, I think, is the future of healthcare. It's
Thank you. Yeah, we
compiled
agree.
data and personalized action plans because it's not a one size fits all diet. It's not a one size fits all protocol. It's not a one size fits all anything. We're all
Yeah,
different, literally definitionally different from each other. And so we
100%.
can't follow the same thing that everybody else has to follow. We got to follow the thing that's meant for us. The problem in the past is that we haven't had enough computing power to pull and analyze enough data to know what's going to work for our specific situation. So that's what I'm super one of the things I'm looking forward to the most about AI is its ability to help us, live longer and healthier lives. And I think we're going to have more and more access to those things as companies like yours, pioneer this new version of medical technology.
Yeah, thank you. I know, absolutely agree. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous. We grew up with the USDA food pyramid, and you look at
Right.
that archaic, like, I mean, what's going to happen in this administration? It'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see. But I'm an optimist, and again, I think reworking, things like the food pyramid, is that really optimal? Like, given our rates of, obesity and diabetes, like, we know that it's not. And so that idea of personalization, and it still follows all the same principles and pillars. I mean, if you really distill Huberman or Peter Attia, I'm a big fan of, or
Mm-hmm.
most of these, I mean, nearly all the longevity protocols. I mean, there's some very basic principles that are really across the board. And then it's up to the human, once you have the protocol to do the thing, to do the things you said you're going to do. And so we really focus on small incremental changes, that drive a lot of value. And some of them are very, commonplace. Like another one, is like the idea of single tasking versus multitasking. Like
Mm-hmm.
from a neurological perspective, we did not develop to do multiple things at once. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's literally not how our brains, would be developed. We're generally going after food and protein. And so this idea that we have the phone and the computer and the TV and and the dog and the kids and all at the same time. I mean, it's just actually inefficient, at the end of the day. And so if you do one thing for 20 minutes as opposed to do, three things for 1 hour, you're going to have a higher overall efficiency in terms of the output. So.
Man, I love the conversation, Thoryn. I appreciate you coming on the show. Anybody else that's listening that's like, okay, but what does this have to do with me making money? We've said it three, four, five, seven times on this episode. You are a holistic being. You cannot separate your physical and mental health well-being from your ability to go be productive and generate abundance in the world around you, in your personal life, in your family. This stuff really, really matters. So, Thoryn, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing a little bit more about what you got going on. Can you tell us where we can go to find more about you and Brain One and everything else you're working on?
Yeah, sure. So brain.one is the website, and they can jump on the wait list and I think put in your name, and we're happy to put them to the front of the list. And then I'm also on Strava, big athlete on that side.
Nice.
So can be found on Strava as well. Try not to do social quite as much, but yeah.
Brain.one. Go check out what Thorn's got going on over there. If you are a runner, you're into a bunch of good workouts, go follow him on Strava. Thorn, thanks so much for doing this. Everybody else listening, remember, money will only solve your money problems, but it is a little bit easier to solve the rest of your problems if you got some money in the bank. So let's solve that problem first here on the Travis Makes Money podcast. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next time. Peace out.